I'm here today with Lori Waken, and we are going to visit a little bit about the differences between assisted living, independent living, what's in between, how the different stages of life affect seniors. So, Lori, tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, and it's good to be here with you again, Bob, and visiting about aging-related issues. I happen to work currently for what's called a continuum of care retirement community here locally in Enid. And what that means is that we're kind of a all-around community living environment for adults ages 55 and up who maybe they're completely independent, but they just want some of the benefits of a community lifestyle. Maybe they are mostly independent, but might need a little bit of help with one or two of their activities of daily living. Maybe they've got pretty significant dementia issues and need the safety and security that is offered by a memory care unit, say. Possibly they've had an injury or an illness, have been hospitalized, aren't quite ready to go home yet, and so they need some ongoing nursing care after a hospitalization, but they are planning to go back home at some point. Or maybe they need a full-time living experience in a community that offers around-the-clock nursing care. So you can imagine that's a lot of different situations, and within those situations are even other specific types of living situations that are needs of our adult aging population. So I get calls a lot asking me, okay, well, I've noticed that I'm having a little bit of difficulty living by myself, but I still really want to live by myself, and I'm doing okay, but I'm kind of getting tired of taking care of my yard, and maybe I don't like cooking all the time anymore. Would there be a place for me? And yes is the answer. If you would like to live in a community with other adults of your same type of situation in your same age range, we've got independent living options. And this isn't just in my place of business, but there are places scattered throughout communities. Enid actually has a good number of options for older adults who can take care of just about all of their needs, their living experience on a day-to-day basis on their own, maybe with some assistance from someone like Grace Care, but for whatever reason, they just really would like to be a part of a community. So sure, that would be an independent living kind of an option. In those situations, you're provided services like housekeeping, regular housekeeping services, maintenance and lawn services, meals maybe are offered once or twice a day so that you would have the option of cooking in your own home or maybe going to a communal dining area. Maybe alert systems are available in case you did have a fall or an emergency, there'd be someone nearby to respond. So that would kind of be an independent living situation. Opportunities for socialization, scheduled activities, maybe some transportation services. That might be a good option for adults who are primarily independent but just really would like to have some communal living benefits.
Okay, and so I've got a mother at home, and I'm seeing some decline in her activity, and what kind of advice would you give me?
Well, first of all, I would ask you, if you were calling me and just kind of not knowing where to start, I would have you tell me a little bit about your mom. What's her situation? What are your concerns? What is it specifically that led you to make that phone call? You might say, well, she's missing some of her medication. I've noticed that she's not maybe taking all of her meds properly. Or, she's really just kind of lonely. She's handling everything okay, but she's kind of lonely. She doesn't get out very much. Maybe she's not eating properly and is losing some weight, or is forgetting things and becoming anxious and distressed. And as we kind of narrowed down your concerns and what you saw as changes in her day-to-day experience living at home, we could kind of narrow down whether maybe an independent living situation might be a good place to start, or whether maybe an assisted living situation would be a good place to start. Sometimes folks have these issues, and I know you well know they are concerned, but mom or dad or the loved one really doesn't want to leave home.
Right.
So, their question is, what do I do? And in those cases, there are some options like, Grace Care, other home care agencies, or I might present a live-in type of a situation like an independent living community.
So you hit on a couple of key issues there: medication, is key, and I think both of us hear that a lot, that my parents not taking their meds the way they should be. So that could be an indication that, hey, it's time to have some assistance.
Absolutely.
And another point you hit on was isolation, loneliness. Can you speak a little more about that? How do you see that impacting seniors in our community?
Well, it has a huge impact, and I think that that's become more widely accepted, and there's more emphasis on and knowledge about the detrimental effects of isolation on older adults, in particular after our recent COVID situation. The balance between keeping older adults safe by keeping them isolated and away from potential exposure or infection versus keeping them away from social stimulation, from loved ones, from activities and mental and emotional engagement, which is the most detrimental. And I think we're coming to see more and more that social isolation and loneliness is extremely detrimental to not only the health, but the quality of life of older adults.
I've read several articles lately that talked about they believe that isolation could be the leading cause of death in our seniors. It's not on any death certificate, but when they look back and see when did this person's health kind of drop off a cliff, it's when they isolated.
Absolutely.
And so, I think you and I both deal with kids of older adults, and they call and say, visit with us, but then they say, well, Mom seems to be doing good. I call her once a day, and she tells me she's doing fine and everything. What would you say to that person?
I would say that just if you have a gut instinct that something's maybe not quite right, then something's probably maybe not quite right. Mom and Dad, aunt and uncle, grandma and grandpa, a lot of the times are very, very good at what we call masking, at putting forth, the best face. And I would love to see a scientific study on the ability of some people who really are experiencing some fairly moderate to significant cognitive decline, but yet for that 5-minute phone call can sound, or 10 or 20-minute visit, can make themselves appear as normal as they ever have been. It's amazing. But then as soon as the telephone goes down or the door shuts, they don't really remember where they are, what's going on, and things are a little bit more hinky than
one of the areas that I've seen that masking is in the doctor's office.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how it works, but you walk in the doctor's office and it's like they can carry on a normal conversation with the doctor, and the doctor says, well, they seem fine to me, and you walk out. But what the doctor doesn't realize was we could bring them back in maybe a few hours or the next day and have that same conversation.
Absolutely.
And they wouldn't recognize that.
Absolutely.
So my mother's in independent living, and then I say, okay, she needs a little more help. She goes into assisted living. And what kind of services are in the assisted living?
Assisted living is for those folks who are primarily independent in many areas of their life. In my community, we have still independent apartments. So it is a private home. It's not like being in a nursing center, say, or a hospital room where you're kind of at the mercy of the staff. It's more, this is your private home. Your apartment is a part of a larger community, and the staff who is there is kind of working for you in your home. So it's supposed to be, ideally, resident-centered, home-like environment, promoting the highest level of independence and autonomy and individual preference as possible, while keeping the residents safe. And also, you can't have a community where everybody gets to be completely independent and have everything they want. There's a little bit of compromise and give and take that goes on there just by the nature of being in a community. But the primary services that are offered in an assisted living community would be things like medication management. So the staff is now responsible for making sure that the resident has the proper medications at the proper time in the proper manner. If something is off, if something needs to be changed or reported to a family member or a physician or pharmacist, the staff's going to make sure that happens.
Okay.
And so that is really a big safety net for a lot of residents, is just having that oversight. Now, if you have a resident who really wants to self-administer some of their medications, that's okay. We just need to have a doctor's order for that. And we also provide oversight to still make sure that even though the resident is handling that and managing it, that we're observing and making sure that they're keeping
right
up with
way.
that.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I would imagine in your profession, one of the hardest things is when you see that person decline and maybe they need to go to the next step. What are you looking for when, hey, you have to make that phone call and say, hey, your mom's no longer
Right.
functioning in the assisted living, we need to take the next step?
That is very difficult. And, sometimes we're fortunate and the resident might come and express that themselves. I'm not feeling completely safe. I feel like I need a little bit more assistance. Can you show me assisted living and what that might look like and the services? And they take ownership of making that decision for themselves. And that is a lovely thing when it's,
Yeah.
they take the responsibility and feel like they've got a sense of control over that. Sometimes the family comes and says, we really would feel like mom would be safer in a higher level of care, and we will convince her that this is the thing to do. So in that situation, I would walk alongside them, helping them to give mom or dad a sense of control and involvement in making that decision, showing them why it really is a better decision for them on a day-to-day basis. I rarely have had anyone, after getting over the hump of making that decision, regret that they did. Usually it's the other way. I wish I would have made this decision a little earlier.
Right.
Worst case scenario would be when, let's say I had an independent living resident, we'd been trying for a long time to try to help them to be safe in their current living situation, maybe contracting some private duty home care to come in and help them, and it's just not meeting their needs at that point in time. It's not going to get better, we can tell. And either the resident or their family member or both are highly resistant to making that move. In those situations, usually I'll have multiple conversations with the family members, with the resident. We'll do whatever we can to try to help them to stay safe. And when we get to a point where that just fails and we're at an impasse, I might have a conversation with them that sounds something like, you do still have choices here. I'm not taking your choices away from you. You have control over what direction you're going to go. Unfortunately, right now, one of the choices that you have is not to continue living the way that you are.
Right.
And for the most part, they ultimately come to respect and accept that.
And I would think you probably have to bring in a doctor at that point,
Yes.
maybe a nurse to kind of
Yes.
reinforce what you're telling the family.
Absolutely. A lot of times I will encourage a family who's concerned maybe and mom and dad are resistant to call the doctor's office, have that conversation with the physician, let them know what's going on, and then try to get the cooperation of the physician in helping to encourage mom or dad to consider making a change.
One misconception I think a lot of people have is they're thinking that their private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, is going to kick in and help with this, and
Yeah.
that's not the case. In
That is
Oklahoma,
a heartbreaking
at least.
conversation to have. It really is, because, a lot of folks do assume that in our old age, when we need some assistance, whether it's, if not independent living, then at least assisted living, that, Medicare or Medicaid are going to hop in and help with that. Unfortunately, in Oklahoma, that almost exclusively is not the case. There are a few Medicaid assisted living communities in the state, not very many. They're spread out, and that changes because it's a difficult process to go through, and so sometimes an agency might try to offer Medicaid support and then it just doesn't work, so they can no longer do that.
So any last parting words you want to share with, we call her daughter Judy, that's at home taking care, because usually it's some female in the home that's really helping the elderly person make that decision, or even like to, if you want to speak to some people that are seniors, you know, plan early.
Absolutely. That would be my strongest word of advice to either aging adults, and I include myself in that. I turned 55 this year, so I am old enough to live in a 55 plus retirement community. It doesn't hurt to get information. Find out what's out there. Even if you're not going to use it today or this year or, you know, for 10 or 15 years, it's never too early to go out there, make a call, talk to someone. The folks who work in these communities are there not only to, you know, make a sale and fill a room. They're there to help educate, to help prepare older adults for future decisions, or for adult children or loved ones of older adults to help support them as their older loved one continues to age and need to make some of these choices. You don't want to make it when you have to.
And that's when the majority of people make it,
Right.
when there's some kind of medical emergency or something serious going on. So I guess we're both on the same page. We want to tell
Absolutely.
people, get the information early. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with this show, is get information out there. Don't wait till you are under a tremendous pressure. Oh my gosh, I got to make a decision. Get the information now. Lori's number is there on the screen. If you have any questions about what we talked about today or anything else, Lori's always available. Give her a call there at the Commons and get your information. Get the information early.
Absolutely.
So-
And I think it's okay when you call someone just to say, listen, I'm not here to buy anything. Don't try to sell me anything, but I would love to have some information about this issue.
Because both of us just want to be a resource. That's our greatest desire, is to be a resource, to get that information out, to take some of the stress off people.
Absolutely.
Well, Lori, thank you very much for being here today. We hope that we were informative and people know a little more about assisted living and the options that they have and then they knew before. So thank you.
Thanks, Bob.